Alrighty, let's get this show on the road. So,
I mean, is
for
Guy even here? That's the question.
Yes, bro.
yeah, guy came back.
Wake up.
Great start. All right, so for those people who are new, let's go ahead and do a quick round of introductions. I'm Whisper. I'm the Sin guy on Wowhead, and also mod here. I moderate this everything. It's my job. Anyone else?
Ladies first.
What? Dude, I'm trying to pull up a meme. Okay, listen. I do outlaw stuff. I play the game, not a lot now, but a lot in general, okay? And a lot of people don't like me. That's me, forever guy. Hello.
Yeah, and I'm the anti-outlaw guy. Yeah, assassination one trick, and I do the guides for Icy Veins.
Very nice, very nice.
Oh yeah, I do Wowhead and Method. I know what I'm talking about. Don't
Nobody
worry.
asked you, guy. It's okay.
Yep.
All right. So obviously, a lot has changed since our last podcast 2 months ago. So, what are our general thoughts about the changes so far? I mean, obviously, we got some new connections, got some new talents. How are we feeling overall?
Oh,
Getting better, yeah.
You know me. I'm an optimistic person, so I've always been a big fan of the trees, and every single iteration, it only gets better. And right now, for the law, ooh, this tree is so good. The class tree perfectly complements the spec tree. Oh, it's the nuts.
Yeah. Wish I could say the same for assassination, I guess, at this point. But it's definitely been improved a lot. I think the best part by far is that you can really notice the feedback that has been given from the players as well. It's not just like screaming into the void, but it's actually being used to make informed decisions on what might actually be best from a gameplay perspective. So the only sad part, I guess, is that they're kind of done, I guess, now at this point with the overall design. But maybe there'll be an exception to the rule here,
Well,
and we might see more changes.
yeah, to cope a little bit, they did say generally,
Yeah.
there's probably a few things they're gonna still touch up a little bit, It's not just I'd like to think it's not just a closed book just yet.
Yeah, I don't know. We might see another iteration, but I'm honestly not too sure how big that'll be. My biggest concern is still the class tree, but unlike Seli, I'm actually very happy with the Sin tree. I think with the latest round of connections, it's actually looking pretty saucy. Um, and then I don't personally like the sub tree, but I know that the new dance macabre. I know that that's looking really sick if it gets tuned properly. So I think there's a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, I think there's like 2/3 in the subtree that you can get excited about, and there's 1/3 where it's kind of. I think that still needs a little bit of attention, but we'll see how much it actually gets.
Yeah. Speaking about Dance Macabre, do we want to go over sub real quick? And by real quick,
Sure.
I mean probably a while.
Yeah.
So obviously, Dance Macabre, super sick. I love it. Everyone loves it. But my concern right now is that it's going to basically end up just being like a one trick where it doesn't change the rotation but just adds more damage. Like it's just dark shadows.
Yeah.
So I hope that it gets tuned to where it actually like forces you to make an interesting dance. That would be sick. But for right now, I don't know.
All right, here's
I
my
think it like the overall design of the ability definitely has like the potential for adding a lot of skill expression to your dance windows as subtlety. But I think with the numbers that we've given or that we've been given so far, it will not reach that level. So it will just be considered a damage amp for the most part. That might change if you have like some boss encounters where you can really like utilize the damage amp because the boss takes additional damage as well. And then maybe you can like sync those to do some massive eviscerates or anything. But overall, I think, yeah, the numbers are just too low for it to really change into a skill expression talent, and it'll just be Dark Shadows 2.0.
All right, here's my $1 million idea. Okay, you guys ready?
Oh no.
Sure.
All right, so remove the functionality, right? Remove the functionality. You know how when you do a double spell in the dance, it drops all the stacks?
Uh-huh.
Just get rid of that, okay?
Yeah, that's
Now,
how I read it initially, right? Like the way I read it initially, it was just similar to the encounter and like what was it like Eternal Palace, like the
Yeah.
console fight, where as long as you didn't use the same ability like back to back twice, you would not like get a detrimental effect on you. And
Yeah.
that's how I read it initially. It's just that as long as you don't cast like 2 Shadow Strikes back to back, you will keep ramping up during it. And
Alright.
I honestly think that would be more interesting than trying to add like non-dance abilities into it, simply because there's not that many to choose from in the first place, right? Especially since it's just locked into builders and spenders. Otherwise, you could have done some like really insane stuff with detection and a bunch of other stuff and feint and crimson vial and whatever to
Yeah,
really
so
like stack it up to insane levels.
here's why I think this needs to happen, okay? So the number one complaint that I have with subtlety, and I've seen a few other people complain, okay? It's the AoE rotation. It kind of sucks. Do we all agree that the AoE rotation for subtlety kind of sucks?
I'd say it sucks pretty hard. It doesn't just kind of suck.
Yeah. So imagine this, right? You're in an AoE pack, right? You go Shuriken Storm. You sprinkle in a little Rupture, okay? You Shuriken Storm again. Now you're at 2 stacks, right? Because you get the 1 and the 2. Then you do a cheeky little, a little Eviscerate. 3 stacks right there, right? And then you do it again. This time you're doing Black Powders. You're getting a big, juicy damage in. Maybe even sprinkling a Shadow Strike in there. And then you're getting these big, juicer shadow dances. You're exciting up the rotation a little bit. You're sprinkling in some fun abilities. That's how I think it should work.
Uh-huh. And
You do not sound enthusiastic about that at all.
What do you mean?
Okay,
How
so
much?
so you want these big juicers, right? You want the big juicer black powders, yeah?
Mhm.
And your way to get that is by shadow striking.
Yeah.
So you're gonna cut an entire GCD of AoE out. You're just gonna single target for 1 GCD, and then hope that there's 1 GCD further on that does not only
maybe
the
you just
GCD
don't do the
that
Shadow
you
Strike.
missed.
Why are we getting caught in the weeds here? Okay, we're getting bogged down in the weeds right now. Okay, the bottom line is I want the sub AoE to sprinkle in some other finishers and get benefit in the black powder. Okay, that's what I want. I don't want to be doing storm powder, storm powder, storm powder, storm powder. I want to be doing like storm powder with a little bit of eviscerate, a little bit of rupture to juice up the black powders.
I have something for you. Ready? Fresh idea. Sec tech.
Bro, that doesn't fit. Then you're just adding 1 finisher. My idea adds 2 to the rotation, and 2 is a bigger number than 1.
Oh God, my head hurts already.
What do you mean? This is a good idea.
Guy, do you always drink coffee?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's something else in there.
Good.
Like there's no way that's just coffee.
Bro, are you telling me this isn't a good idea?
I do agree though. Like having some way to spice up the subtlety rotation would be nice. The problem is that I think the finishers aren't the way to look at it, right? I think you can't fix sub AoE as long as Shuriken Storm gives 5 combo points. Or maximum combo points rather on AoE. I think that is, while that enables a lot of things, I think it's also the cause of then you don't really have a lot of choice in your finishers because you're also energy saturated. Like you don't struggle with energy during your dances, so it's like you don't even have to worry about using like energy efficient finishers. You just use whatever finisher does the best damage in the situation you're finding yourself in, and then you'll always have a hit rate for prio single target, and it's always going to be BP for AoE. whether or not you add a backstep there or Shadow Strike or whatever, doesn't really change the fact that over an extended period of like 30, 40, 50 seconds, you're still casting like 80% of your GCDs will still be just 2 different abilities.
Well, with my idea, you'll add a little bit more. That's what I'm trying to say.
But will that make a meaningful difference, right? Like I'm just thinking back to Hidden Blades. Sure, you could get like a 50% amp on Fan of Knives, but it was only on one Fan of Knives, and then you do a bunch more that still did the regular damage. If you're buffing like 1 or 2 black powders for like 30, 40, 50% out of casting like 20 in a 40-second window, is that really a noticeable DPS gain ultimately, or will that still not just be?
Well, you just crank it
kinda
to a
same.
value that makes it worth it. Listen, all I'm saying is I'm coming up with original, fantastic ideas, and I just have 2 of my co-hosts just tearing me down. Okay, that's the vibe I'm getting right now.
I mean, the
I mean,
problem is you have to
you know what the
tune
common
it.
denomination is there, though, right?
You have to tune it
What's
high
up?
enough to the point where like you're missing out a GCD casting a shit ability in order to get.
Eviscerate's not a shit ability.
I mean, it is
It
an
would have to be
AOE
like
though.
25
People-
to 30%,
people-
I think, for that to actually be
Dude.
worth it, right? And then
Dude,
it's just
people-
too powerful.
Dude, people have coped all expansion that anytime sub is somewhat playable in keys, it's like, oh my god, you can press eviscerate. There's so much priority. It's so important. Now eviscerate's a shit ability. What happened?
Oh my god. I've never been on the funnel squad.
Neither have I. Okay, but listen, I'm attacking a straw man right now. Okay, so you have to.
Yeah, okay. I'll go out in the cornfield, guy.
Yeah, he's fighting windmills right now.
Good god. But like,
In all
alright.
seriousness, though, like how would you feel about if chaining 2 Shadowlances back to back, if that would not reset the bonus?
Well, that'd
Yeah,
be kind
that's
of
sick.
epic. Like
That's
it
sick.
lingers for a few seconds afterwards.
Yeah, or exactly, like because you already have Lingering Shadow, right, which already gives you this gameplay style of you go into dance, and obviously we're used to having a lot of damage in dance, but then there's also the opportunity to build around having damage like immediately after dance. And yeah, if you then just chain 2 dances back to back, I think that would have actually been more interesting than having it hard reset, even if you extend the duration of the dance.
Yeah, I just don't like the fact that it drops if you press the same spell twice. Because like with a class like Windwalker or a spec like Windwalker, there's actually a plethora of adjacent spells that do similar things where you can actually cycle them properly and it kind of works. But because subs rotation, especially like on single target, right, you're pressing dance into Shadow Strike, right, and you can't really do anything else. But if you get this like lingering plus you get this lingering effect in addition to not dropping, you can actually build these like you use a bunch of shitty abilities and then eventually you get these like huge second dances after you kind of brick the first one.
Yeah, I do think that there's a difference there though between Windwalker and Rogue, and that is it just works like these kind of abilities just work better on classes that naturally have like low cooldowns on their skills, right? Like I'm even just thinking if you had something like Dance Macabre on Outlaw, I think it would actually feel a lot better because you just have more abilities to press.
Oh, be nuts.
And then yeah, for Subtlety, I think it's still lacking like a way to stack up the bonus a little bit higher before you're kind of forced into casting an ability a second time. And I think that ultimately is the main concern here, is that while the potential is there to really build higher stacks for like high damage abilities towards the end of the dance, you just don't have enough abilities to do so. Unless you're like hard gimping your rotation on purpose just for one big eviscerate, so you can make Twitch clips that you can link in off topic for the next 3 years.
Oh yeah.
But beyond that, it's like if something like Flare would be an ability that worked with it right, I think it would be a lot better, because that would already add like one more layer of abilities that you actually kind of want to press either before dance or right at the beginning of it. And at the moment, I'm just not seeing it. It's just Dark Shadows.
Yeah, that'd be badass.
Is there anything else in the sub tree that you guys don't like?
The left side?
The left side. I agree. The left side feels like a PvP side.
Yeah, which isn't bad, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing.
I mean, one extra charge of Vanish and then Shadow Dust, I get it. But on the other hand, like, I also don't really. I don't know. I don't see the
Just
value.
tune it higher.
Just tune it higher 5-hit.
Well, like literally, yeah. Like you can say this about like pretty much like any collection of talents you want, right? It's like, oh, like I remember like the whole left side of the tree for Outlaw, people were saying like, oh, this is like terrible, like it's never going to compete with Fan the Hammer, blah 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 blah. And then people played with it and were like, oh, this is like actually like kind of pretty strong. And if it was weak, you just crank the numbers up a bunch, and then eventually kind of hits a value that is actually worth considering in PvE, right?
Well, yeah, sure, but is just cranking up the values good? Like, is that just fine? Like, are we happy with that? If instead of one additional charge of Vanish, it gave like 3, would we be happy with that?
Well, no, you probably have to crank up the value of what's it called? You have to crank up the value of the Shadow Dust, right? You have to make the Shadow Dust better.
I mean,
I
sure.
don't like Vanish as a DPS button in any of the specs. I'll be honest
that's
with you.
too bad. That's the life we live. Okay,
That's
Vanish.
because you're
the
old,
life we
Seli.
live.
What if it was like a charge of symbols instead?
Well, then it's just busted.
But then you tune down the numbers, as per your own
Well.
argument.
You know what? You make a compelling argument.
God damn, you got him.
You got me. I'm convinced.
I don't know. I also
But yeah, it's
I also don't know how I feel about 25-second symbols yet either. Because the talent that used to be symbols is now just like a 5-second reduction. And
Yeah.
I don't know how that, like, it doesn't seem that big on the surface, but then you think about it, and like a 5-second reduction on symbols might actually just fuck you over.
Well, like how though?
Well, like, imagine a world where you have your dance charges and you're going on, your rotation, and then you run out of dance charges. Or you overcap, you have to spend one. And now you're sitting there and you're like, okay, well, I have symbols coming up.
Mhm.
Right? But now
Mhm.
okay, well, I guess it is just a plan better situation, but
Yeah, literally, I was like kind of not listening to anything you were saying, and I was just gonna say skill issue. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, I mean, kind of skill issue, but I don't know. It feels weird to me.
the problem is how much CDR are you gonna get without picking some of the talents on the right side?
Yeah.
On dance, I mean. And are you ultimately just gonna end up on having a lower cooldown on symbols than you have on dance, and then you're still just syncing them up anyway, and then the cooldown reduction on symbols feels completely wasted.
Well, speaking of cooldown reduction and how powerful,
Yeah,
it
then you
is,
need an outlaw rogue or something in your group, I guess.
What I'm trying to say is that cooldown is sometimes really good and sometimes not very good. Okay, maybe this is the nuts, but it also could be the butts.
You're so poetic.
Thank you.
Among other things, yeah.
Yeah, artistic.
Yeah. But now overall, I think that the subtree is fine. It's workable. I'm gonna say something now that I wanted to say towards the end of the day of the cast, is that it kind of doesn't matter how good or bad our trees are because I mean, even if they don't feel super good, if they do like 10% less damage in every other class, we're just gonna get an aura buff anyway, right? And then it's still going to do decent damage. So considering the tuning right now is kind of whatever anyway, it's mostly about the gameplay feel, and we can't really talk about the gameplay feel because a lot of the gameplay just can't be felt because it doesn't work.
Is this the segue into the outlaw section? Cooldown reduction, gameplay feel, the best tree, the best spec tree on Rogue right now.
A 15-minute guy monologue.
Listen, it doesn't have to be a monologue, okay? I'm just gonna highlight why this tree is the best, okay? So number one.
So 30 minutes.
No, listen, okay? It's everybody time to turn the volume up because I'm about to get very passionate about this outlaw tree, okay? You guys ready?
The good thing is that he's the guy who has to leave. Me and Seli don't have deadlines.
Yeah. Technically, we should talk about assassination in the class tree first, and then just kind of drag it out, and then we do outlaw towards the end. But then Guy has to go work, and we just call it, right?
Okay, listen, okay. So the outlaw tree, if you look everywhere on the outlaw tree, okay, there is synergy. You cannot avoid the synergy within the tree, okay? If you go to the left side and you grab the ambush trait at the bottom that makes your ambush hit twice, that has synergy with I don't know the talents by the name because they keep changing the names and stuff. But there's one that makes it so your ambush gives you a pistol shot proc. That has synergy with Fan the Hammer, and then the bottom trait on the left that makes your ambush hit twice, which has synergy with Count the Odds. Dispatcher has synergy with Shadow Dance, which is on the class tree. You have, it's just, no matter where you look on this tree, you can find a collection of buttons that just works, okay? And what more could you ask for than a tree that just works, okay?
Isn't that going to cause some balancing issues though, if you have like so many different concepts working with each other, which is obviously really nice from a conceptual point of view, but that also means that it's a lot harder to balance. And while there is a lot of choice, at the end of the day, you'll sim it, and one of them will be better, and then it kind of feels like a lot of the choice is wasted.
Well, as a
Because
little bit
balancing
of
all of these to the same level, I think, is going to be really hard.
Oh, well, it's literally impossible. But what I will say is a little history lesson, okay? So back in Battle for Azeroth, right? There were a lot of different outlaw builds, okay? And a lot of them weren't very good, but people played them anyway, right? They were 1% worse, 2% worse, 3% worse, right? And people still played them. And then there were essences. Essences brought in some different stuff. Some what were they called? Azerite traits. Azerite traits mix things up. And then look, you have this expansion, right, for Outlaw, right? Between Kyrian, Night Fae, Necrolord, and Venthyr, throughout the expansion, every single one of these covenants has been tier 1 competitive. I don't really know how they do it with Outlaw, but somehow Outlaw just has a lot of really random build diversity within the expansions that just kind of exists and is almost equally competitive, and people trick themselves into thinking that their build is the best version of the spec. So I mean, I don't know how they do it consistently, but they've managed to do it 2 expansions in a row. So I'm pretty optimistic that this tree is going to have a consistent level of diversity and options that people can convince themselves is actually good.
I'm actually a little concerned because Guy took a breath, and I thought he disconnected.
No, bro. I'm collecting my thoughts because I got a lot to say about
Do you
Outlaw.
think he disconnected or hoped he disconnected?
It's a
What's
little
wrong
bit of
with you?
both.
Nah,
But-
I do agree though. I think that out of all the spec trees that we have right now, Outlaw seems the most cohesive. With each line as you go down, making a lot of sense, and you pick a talent and you go 1 or 2 rows further down, and then there's some interaction happening between what you picked earlier and what you either choose from in your next row,
Yeah.
or just what the capstone will ultimately end up being. And
Well,
I think
that's
that's really really awesome.
Yeah, one thing I want to say that I feel is really interesting about talent trees that some people disagree, obviously, right? But something I really like about the outlaw tree is that the capstones are powerful and you can build around them, but they don't feel essential. And there's a lot of really powerful travel nodes, right? Where you can hypothetically you can make a Shadow Dance, keep it rolling, Dreadblade's Fan the Hammer build, right? And you only need to go 1 capstone. You don't need to rush down to Greenskin Wickers because Greenskin Wickers it's good, but it's not crazy powerful where you feel like you're just going through these nodes just for the sake of getting to the the powerful keystone. I've tested a few different builds on beta, just testing against training dummies in a few dungeons, and there's a lot of builds that you can go that only go 1 capstone or even 0 capstones, which I think is really interesting because it means there's a lot of power all over the tree that is compelling to talent into, rather than just I need keep it rolling, let me rush down right to keep it rolling. Oh, Greenskin Wicker's overpowered, let me rush down all the way down there, right?
I mean, yeah, obviously it's nice. The question is, how will it be tuned at the end of the day, right? Like, it kind of doesn't matter to me how. First of all, I mean, I've said this before. I'm not a super big fan of rogues in general having super high APM, and I think as the spec plays right now, it's even more demanding of players. to press the correct button than it is on retail. And I kind of feel that it's getting a little bit too much. So while it's nice for like the top end players to really be able to leverage all the spec has to offer to do a lot of damage, I think people who just aren't as familiar with all the interactions and what to press at what time, they might be doing like 20-30% less damage. Don't you think that that might be a concern just in general? Because historically we've seen that Blizzard does not like specs being so hit and miss when it comes to how much damage it can do when it's played by either an intermediate player or like a super advanced player, right?
I think that's just like an impossible problem to get around, especially when you make specs that have high APM and feedback loop systems that reward you for playing well. Like Outlaw, meme all you want, but like the spec does reward you for playing well. The better you play, it snowballs, right? Like if you're wasting a lot of combo points, you're slowing down your spec in a drastic way, right? Where the better you play and the higher APM you can maintain, the faster you're able to keep this snowball going. And just by the nature of how abilities like Restless Blades and Dread Blades and Keep It Rolling, how these abilities are designed kind of rewards you for playing well. And I'm sure there will be builds that are a little bit more idiot proof, and there's always assassination, which I don't know how it is now, but it should be low APM still, correct?
It kind of depends. I mean, there's definitely builds that
I
are
think
higher
it's going to be
APM.
more than it was in BFA and SL at the beginning.
Like ballpark me.
It probably like at the start of the expansion, it's easily 50-ish, and then depending on what build you take, you might even go above like 55 and closer to 60.
I think that's fine. I think there's like options for players that want like a slower play style and assassination, but how's I guess it's all relative, right? Where if 50 APM is on the low end for Dragonflight, is that an issue, or should it be lowered? Is what you're trying to say, right?
I'm more concerned about the top end, right? Like the bottom end, you can always fix to some degree with tuning. I think it's the top end that is harder to get a grip on, because especially in a talent tree that has so many build opportunities, I'm kind of thinking to PoE, right, where it's a very similar issue where there's always the odds of something being really, really broken. Because there's just too many interactions for everybody to consider when we're going into a new raid tier, balancing it. Mm-hmm. And then if that requires a really high level of skill and proficiency with the spec, it's gonna get nerfed, right? Because we just haven't had specs in the game anymore that are really, really good, but only if they're being played by the top end gamers in the game. The last time we had that was with Surrender to Madness Shadow Priest, and that got gutted, and the talent was unplayable for an entire expansion. So that's basically what I'm worried about. It's just if it's too high APM and there's too many decisions to be made in shorter GCD windows than any other class in the game, it just stands out as being too challenging for the regular player. And I don't think there's room in the game anymore for a spec or a class like this to exist.
Well, here's my plan, okay? We're gonna do a little sandbagging, okay? I'm gonna only publish builds that are idiot proof. I'm gonna keep the OP builds a secret, and then whenever launch comes out, I'm gonna come out with all the builds and they can't nerf it. There's my plan, okay? You ready?
Speaking of nerfs, though, I think that
guys turning into Warlock player, yeah.
First off, I'm honestly I'm gonna get massacred for this, but I'm excited for the Outlaw tree.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, every single expansion, Outlaw is so well designed.
Guys, shut up. God,
I'm agreeing with you, man.
I don't need you to agree with me. I need you to shut up.
All right, whatever, bro. Go ahead.
So honestly, the thing that I'm most excited about is the fucking Blade Flurry shit on the right side of the tree, where you have an increased cap on Blade Flurry, and then in Cleave it just does Gigadam. That's sick to me. I love that.
Yeah, man, it owns.
And I don't know. It cements Outlaw as the Cleave spec, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I guess not just like within the rogue class, right? But actually within the entire game. I think
Yeah.
there's not going to be a whole lot of other specs out of all the other DPS classes that will be able to match that, simply because, I mean, Outlaw was already good on like low target cleave and even like 5 to 6 target cleave.
Yeah,
And I think this makes it so much better than it was before. So I can definitely see a couple of fights where you have like regular ad spawns, for example, where Outlaw will just completely demolish almost every other class.
Yeah, and people will convince themselves that the spec sucks because it's target capped. It's perfect.
So it's actually true.
It is
Yeah.
true, dude.
So
You'd be like, oh my god, this spec's so bad.
Guy,
It's so good, dude.
you've said many a time now that
Mhm.
Outlaw is the best tree imaginable, and you're in your chair, bricked up. Is there anything you would change about it?
Okay, so change number 1, I would move float like a butterfly and heavy hitter in locations, because then it makes the tree equalized, where on the right side of the tree you have long arm of the law that connects off of ace up your sleeves, and then you have, which is like a defensive utility option, and then if float like a butterfly stems off of ruthlessness, then that is the the adjacent equivalent defensive utility option on the mirrored side, and then it puts heavy hitter in the center. Now, this doesn't like most people's suggestions that I hear with the tree is trying to give people more power, right? Like they're like, oh, put these connector nodes here so I can get all the capstones, right? Or put these connector nodes here so I can skip utility. That's like what I've seen a lot of people suggest when it comes to trees. But this doesn't move any power anywhere. It just makes the tree a little bit more symmetrical and makes more sense to me, because you can get both float and heavy hitter very, very easily with basically any way you set up your tree. It just makes it look a little bit nicer, in my opinion.
I can get behind that. I like that, actually.
Yeah. But like other than that, like basically all my issues are going to be like numerical at this point, where I think ace up your sleeves just intuitively is a bad talent. It needs to, just the percent needs to be higher. I originally said I wanted the rank 2, but the more I've thought about it, the more I don't care about the rank 2, because the rank 2 doesn't do anything, right? It just makes it so between the eyes does more crit damage, right? Which is effectively nothing. It's just, increases your damage. So maybe making the proc chance higher, because at the 4% per combo point is just not going to be competitive enough. So that value should probably be cranked a little bit, and then it just makes a more that's actually like a compelling gameplay loop that happens compared to just crit damage or something. Um, you know, maybe the main gouge stuff should probably be buffed. I think a lot of the bugs with the spec need to be cleaned up in regards to mastery. That'll fix a lot of the mastery stuff being super terrible. But other than that, I think the tree's pretty solid. There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of fun stuff to do. Theory crafting the tree's been a lot of fun.
Cool. I think that's good. That's good. Like I don't have anything else to say, I guess. Now, Seli, 1v1 me IRL. You think the acid tree sucks? I think the acid tree is good.
Wait, do we?
I mean,
wait,
yeah.
sorry.
Speaking of bugs, yeah, let's get to assassination.
Wait, are we just gonna skip Restless Crew again?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
that's exactly what we're gonna do.
And everyone else will too once Dragonflight comes out.
Yeah, I'll let you guys ramble about Assassination, because I don't know shit about Assassination, if I'm being honest. But I just wanted to be on the record that I think Restless Crew is giga overrated. It's just Wind Fury Totem, but probably mostly for casters. People really overrated Fey Blessing in the past. A lot of specs sync their cooldowns together with either trinkets or secondary abilities, where the desyncing of cooldowns will either do nothing or just hurt people, or like not hurt people, but it's just not going to do anything. It might be overtuned with stuff like Fire Mage. It might need like a slight downturn if like there's some stupid Fire Mage build or some Warlock abusing garbage that kind of happens. But other than that, I think it's super, super overrated. But anyway, I'll let you guys talk about Assassination.
I agree with the Restless stuff. I think it's also overrated.
Yeah,
but,
same.
Seli,
Okay, cool.
What's wrong with the acid tree?
It's too linear, I think. Basically, like one of the issues with Assassination is that we're forced into one capstone, right? For the most part. Like, sure, you can play Kingspin IC, but it's unlikely that will be a build that succeeds in any kind of content over one of the other builds that you can do with the tree. And so you'll basically pick a capstone you want to play, and then what you pick up on your way to that capstone is pretty much set in stone. Right? There's not a whole lot of variety there. I don't mind. Like, I think the tree overall with the talent selection and the abilities that are getting boosted and everything is really good. My two main issues with the tree is basically it's just a lot of passive stuff. It's just damage amps on one or two abilities. There's not a whole lot of synergy. Like we just talked about the outlaw here, right? Where there's a lot of synergies. You pick a talent and then you go another talent and then it synergizes in a way that might actually affect your rotational gameplay. And then we go to assassination and we have the same thing. We pick a talent and it somehow works with another talent, but it's only because two of these passive effects work with each other and affect each other. And then maybe there's like some slight double dipping going on or anything. But it's not like I feel that picking any one of these talents is, even just in a minor way, going to alter my rotational gameplay. I could play that tree without any talents and with any talents, and except for the cooldowns that are being added to it, it will still play the same.
Okay, I can kind of agree with that. But I actually think that just the sheer amount of active abilities that are on the tree will, in of themselves, change the gameplay enough to where it's interesting. I was talking to Push about like openers where you have both Kingsbane and Sepsis, and it hurts. Like it hurts my head just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much that you can do with the Sentry, in my opinion. Like if you go and take like Echoing Reprimand in the class tree, and then like maybe Thistle, right? And then in the Sentry you take double poisons. It plays almost identically to how current Sin plays or like Nathria Sin plays, because you would take Blindside, right? So you could go like for some generator stuff, you could go Blindside and it'd play basically identical to Nathria. But then after you look at that, you can look at Kingsbane, you can look at Sepsis, you can look at SBS, right? You can look at Carnage, and all of these abilities coming back just adds another layer that you need to think about. And I think that's really cool, because the active abilities, while themselves are, not the most interesting things. Sepsis isn't the most interesting ability, but it's how they all function together that makes them really cool, I think.
I'm not 100% sure if I agree with that, because at the end of the day, all of these abilities, having a lot more different abilities to press, obviously has some implication as to in which order you're going to press them and everything. But do they really alter the way you play, right? It's like something like Kingsbane. Okay, you want to maintain high ammo uptime during Kingsbane. But whether or not you have Kingsbane up, that's still a priority for you anyway, so it doesn't really affect the way you play. In what way does Sepsis actually affect your gameplay? Like, you press the button, but you're not really doing, like, you're not changing gameplay priorities. You're not changing the way you consume procs, because we don't really have any in the first place. And that's basically my I mean, I wouldn't even call it a worry, right? Because I do think that when we're looking at pure single target, the tree is really good. Because as you said, like there's a lot of choices to go down, both on the left and the right side, and obviously the even the middle is just has a lot of single target options to build. And in that sense, I think the tree is pretty similar to Outlaw still, in terms of like how much choice you have. But it's still dictated by which capstone are you gonna pick, right? My main concern really is with the AoE. Like how is this tree going to do AoE? I look at Outlaw, I see Blade Flurry as a row 1 talent, and I know Outlaw will have AoE. Building a good AoE build as Assassination is going to be hard, and I would argue maybe even impossible. At least the way it's currently built. Not sure if you agree with that though.
I don't know.
Wait. Can you elaborate on that? I don't understand. Is there just too much like important stuff deep within the tree for an AoE build on like both ends, or like what's the actual
you
issue?
sacrifice too much for it, and I don't see the sacrifice being worth the gain you have.
Oh, you're trading like a bunch of single
target. The gain needs
target?
to be higher for the sacrifice and single target to be worth it. That's the issue at the end of the day.
Okay, gotcha.
Because you're skipping both of the single target capstones to get IC. IC is going to be really good, but it's still on a high cooldown. And it's still, in my opinion, not going to be able to compete with like major AoE cooldowns that we've seen from other classes. If you're looking at something like Warlock, like Hunter, like Warrior, We've seen what like really strong AoE cooldowns do, and I just don't think that damage over time will ever be able to match that kind of potential. And you're just unable to really pick up major single target talents if you want to pick up most or all of the AoE talents. You just
So
don't have the talent points for it.
Where is Shardsification on the tree? Is it the top Garrote talent or is it the bottom Garrote
No,
talent?
it's a bottom Garrote talent.
Can you? No,
But that one's weaker than the top one anyway, so.
Yeah, so Shroud of Suffocation is just the combo points now, basically.
It's mostly the combo point gain that's meaningful there, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like the damage, it's not like a flat damage increase that gets scaled with more multipliers after the fact, like it was in BFA. It's just a 15% AM, whereas the top Garrote is 50, so more than 3 times as valuable.
But I don't know. The AoE, I think that the AoE itself is actually really, really strong though, because not only like, okay, maybe not really, really strong, but you still have, like, I'm looking at Lethal Dose, right? Lethal Dose is going to apply to everything. It's just going to be a damage amp, right? It's basically an aura buff at that point. If you use IC, you get Garrote, you get Rupture out. So not only are you getting all of these improved Garrotes out that are doing Giga Dam, but you're also spreading Bone Spikes on everything. Everything is doing, like, everything is giving you more damage. And then on top of that,
so many GCDs though, right? Like imagine the AoE opener. What is it gonna look like?
Yeah, but I mean, on top
like
of
that's
that,
like 10 GCDs set up.
So I think that I would want a talent behind Bone Spike that gives it Death Spike.
Yeah.
Because that's 0 single target, right? Like Death Spike doesn't do anything in single target. But it would be good to help get the spikes out in AoE. But I think with the Fan of Knives talents, if they buff Crimson Tempest to not be shit, I think that there's actually like quite a bit of just passive raw damage there. You throw in Dance giving you Garrotes all the time, and you're looking like a lot like 8.2, 8.3, where you're just doing a lot of Garrote damage. Because you have so many ways to get Garrote damage now, right?
It's a 3-target prio damage, right? That I think is more meaningful in that context than like raw AoE. Like you're not like if there's 15 targets, whether you get 3 Garrotes out or not isn't really going to make a big difference, right? But if you're doing like a 5 to 8 target pull and 3 of those mobs have like higher HP, that's I think where this build or where the spec can really shine. I'm just not sure if it can compete on that kind of level with something like Outlaw at the moment. Basically, the way I look at Assassination right now is there's a lot of temporary damage burst, or not even burst because it's still the damage over time, right? But you have a lot of temporary damage gains. Like your Garrotes are conditional. You don't have them all the time. Your Indiscriminate Carnage is an AoE and is a cooldown, I mean, and it's gonna have like 90-second cooldown. So outside of those windows, I just don't see Assassination doing strong sustained AoE damage, and I think that's kind of been its niche. Or what it's always been good at. The few times where Assassination AoE was viable and competitive with other classes, it wasn't because it did good damage over like 10-15 seconds when you opened on a pack. It was because the longer the pack lived, the stronger Assassination got comparatively to all the burst AoE classes. So we're moving away from that, and I just don't see whether we can keep up with the burst classes or the burst AoE that other specs will have and have had for a long time already. Because it is a major shift, in my opinion, away from the sustained AoE to a more like cooldown-based AoE gameplay.
On the other hand, though, that sustained AoE gameplay that's filled by sub now, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, sustained AoE has been what Outlaw has been about, even when it's been game-breakingly powerful, right? So I mean, like the niche exists, right? Where
stay captured.
Yeah, it's just like they're. It really just always comes down to tuning. Like I feel like there's so much like abstraction. This is how I feel about like the game across the board, right? There's so much abstraction around like like this will never work, or like it won't work because of external reasons. But at the end of the day, it's really just like how much damage do you do, right? And like I guess how quickly do you do damage, right? Where it's like in season 1, people were getting caught in the weeds between subtlety and outlaw and keys, and subtlety is uncapped, outlaw will never be viable in keys, and then in season 2 you played you played subtlety, and then season 1 you played outlaw, and now after a lot of buffs you're playing outlaw again, right? Where it's like people said for a while it's like outlaw will never be viable when it's target capped and everything's been uncapped, and it's like, well, when you tune the numbers high enough, it doesn't really matter, right? Where it's like you can say that sustained damage won't be valuable in comparison to just burst, but you can desync your burst cooldowns from everybody else, right? Where if people are blowing their loads with wings and like all this garbage, dread blades and all this stuff, you just get the next pack kind of thing, right? Where if the numbers are high enough, it'll be played, right? That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be very comfortable because nothing really changes, right? Like the AoE gameplay that we've been gotten or that we have gotten used to over the last like 2 or 3 expansions, nothing really changes. You just get a few more stuff to sprinkle in while you do the same thing you've always done, basically. Whether that will actually do meaningful damage or not ultimately is up to tuning, of course. I do agree though what Whisper said earlier about Bone Spike. I think Bone Spike, and even to a degree Sepsis, without legendary powers or one more node behind it, is kind of lackluster. I suggested it earlier. I would love to not just have Death Spike behind it, but have a choice between the anima power that we have, where you can really use it for like prio damage, even on a boss encounter, by getting like full resets every time a Bone Spike target dies, or Death Spike, obviously. The alternative, if there would be no node behind, was something that I was thinking about, is you could buff Indiscriminate Carnage even more, right? What if it applies all your bleed effects that you have available to like once? What if it also applied to Internal Bleeding and to SBS? Would that be too powerful at that point?
I mean, not only would it be too powerful, but then what are you gonna do? Like you have
You're
all.
gonna vanish, sit in stealth with Master Assassin, and watch everything melt.
Oh, shut the fuck up! Oh my God.
Actually, that sounds kind of badass. I kind of like that.
I don't know. I feel like there's Carnage also brings up that gameplay problem where you have all your dots up, but then what do you do, right?
Yeah.
And historically, like with 8.3, it's been Fan of Knives spamming. It's also been like Crimson Tempest spamming, sort of, but Crimson Tempest hasn't really been good. So I'm a little concerned that there's nothing really there after you get all your dots up. Like you just blow your load on Carnage, and then you're sitting there and you're like, well, I did my rotation. And I don't know how that's gonna feel after like 2 seasons of Mythic Plus, where you're like, oh, I hit IC, now I don't have anything to do again.
What do you mean? You hit Fan and Knives and you hit Venom.
Nah, I think the play there is basically you do single target,
gameplay,
right?
yup.
You're
and then eventually
switching.
it's like a cooldown. You cool down and then you get a free pack where you don't do anything other than play Sub Rogue.
Yeah, and I honestly think that we might just see a shift in gameplay here, where the sustained AoE is probably being overtaken by subtlety because the way that talents work, it's just like better suited for it. And maybe assassination just becomes a spec where you set up your AoE, like your sustained damage as much as you can do. IC obviously helps with that, and once that's settled, you have so many different buttons that you can still press to really put a lot of damage into a single target, that maybe that's what you'll end up doing. You'll just like keep generating combo points with Fan of Knives, obviously, and then you're just gonna try to set up like a good Sepsis if you're playing it for prior damage maybe, or just get the most out of your death mark on single target. I think you'll just do your single target rotation, which won't feel super impactful, but I think at the end of the day, if you can play around it, and we've seen like previous Mythic Plus seasons as well, where people really played around the fact that Sub-Rogue could do so high damage. And I mean, if Assassination now has that role or manages to take that, then maybe people will start playing around the fact that you always do a bit of AoE, but also a lot of single target. I just don't know if you can do that single target.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Gonna be the go-to spec for Loki's. Imagine.
Want to talk about
Probably, yeah.
You're gonna talk about the class tree now?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we should move on to the class tree. Yeah.
What are we thinking?
As always, I love to be a positive person. Class tree, Mwah, mwah. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. I love it now. I think it's good.
You can hear the outlaw player there.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. The thing. Okay, so there are different design philosophies with the rogue class tree compared to like the shaman class tree, right? Obviously, the shaman class tree is a giant web. It's almost all utility except for like a few, spells that you're just always going to be grabbing because they're damage, right? Like you're going to be grabbing your flame shocks, you're going to be grabbing your like lightning bolts, and the basic stuff. And then even the capstones are pretty utility focused. But the rogue tree is more damage focused, right? Where the whole top of the tree is basically just junk. It's just like utility. It's your defensives. It's your basic stuff. And then as you go down, you get these assuming tuning is up to speed. You have a lot of choice in what you're kind of going now, especially with the dance nerf, the ER buff, and the Thistle Tea buff as well. Where when I look at the bottom rows, there's a lot of gameplay altering stuff going on here, right? Where you again more so specifically for Outlaw because it's like all I care about. You can go the Shadow Dance, keep it rolling build with like Echoing Reprimand. Maybe the energy's needed early on in the expansion. We drop ER for Thistle Tea. Seal Fate is a pretty powerful talent. Echoing Reprimand is a pretty powerful talent as well. It's very cheap as well in comparison to the Find Weakness. Like the ambush is 1 point, the soothing darkness is 1 point, and then the find weakness is 2 point, and the shadow dance is 1. Meanwhile, the middle tree is only 1, 1, 1, and 1. So you get a lot of power for really cheap points. The deeper mark for death talent is good as like just a choice, so people aren't forced into mark for death. Cold blood still kind of sucks, so hopefully they look at that. But there's a lot of gameplay decisions that I like when I look at the outlaw tree, because it's not just me looking at the outlaw tree and then making an outlaw tree. It's like I'm looking at both ends of the tree and then combining both ends together to make really interesting builds.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly what it should be, right? Sadly, I'm not sure if Subtlety and Assassination are in the same position there as Outlaw. Obviously, it was kind of to be expected, right? Because like the tree, like the class tree from the very beginning has been designed with this like basic idea: left side Assassination, Outlaw middle, right side sub. And that I think from the very beginning meant that Outlaw would naturally have to be, or that the tree would have to be designed with the idea in mind that Outlaw can branch out both into the left or the right. And for Sub and Asa, that has not really been the case. Now with more connectors, I think it's gotten a lot better. There's a lot more ways to path around, although I still think that it's too railroaded. At the end of the day, I'm just worried about our capstones. I think our capstones kind of suck. Shadow Dance works if you have a lot of ambush talents, and I mean, for obviously it works for Sub, it works for Outlaw. I'm not sure how much it works for Assassination. Then we have Thistle Tea. I think it works for Asa. I don't see how it would ever work for Outlaw. For Subtlety, it might be worth picking up. But you're once again then locking yourself into spending like 26 out of your 30 talent points just pathing to those two nodes, and I think they're not powerful enough to justify that. But as you said, I think Echoing Reprimand is actually looking really good right now with the changes that have happened to how it's positioned and reducing the points needed to actually talent into it.
So here's my thing about the class tree, right? I know we're getting connectors from like the Prey on the Weak row to Cheat Death, right? But my issue is kind of twofold. Like at the top, I want Cheat Death, but I feel like I have to go through utter garbage to get it, right?
Yeah.
And that sucks. But then if I want...
What garbage? What garbage?
Well, garbage like Iron Stomach, Nimble Fingers. That kind of garbage.
Well, then just go into the Sap and the Prey in the Week then. Prey in the Week's good, man.
I mean, Prey on the Week is good.
You go Sap into Cloak into Sap
but
into
it's more
Prey
a
in the Week.
situational thing, right? Like if you want to be a kidney bot on Anduin, sure, it's nice, but overall, I don't really see it as a staple of a talent. So I think the issue here is just that Cheat is too far down to be comfortably picked up without dictating the way you continue further down the tree.
I think
because
that's
you're so deep into the tier 2 at that point already. You're not going to be able to just say, okay, I go the middle all the way down to cheat, and then I stop there, and then I move to one of the other trees, right? That is still untouched at this point, because you've already expended too many points to get there, making it so that you basically can't get another capstone anymore. If you take left side and you get cheat, you can't get Shadowlands anymore, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Vice versa. And I think for something that has been so crucial for a class that does not have a mitigation CD whatsoever, cheat is too core to how we play raid fights and how we survive in raid fights, especially during progression. That I think for it being so core to our class, it's too far into the tree, and which would be fine if the pathing from it was more flexible, but it's not. So say, for example, if you had the connectors from Violent Poisons and Tight Spenders to branch out into left-right, then it would be entirely different because you'd still have a lot of flexibility. Where do you want to go next? But once, at the moment it stands right now, once you're at cheat, it kind of decides how you go further from the tree. And it honestly, it kind of links you or locks you into picking up ER as well.
Yeah, that's sort of my concern as well. But then on the other hand, the offshoots also kind of don't make sense to me. Like kind of the entire upper sub side doesn't make sense to me. Like I get why Shadowrunner exists. It's like open world, whatever, run fast. Subterfuge is a PvP talent at this point, sure. I don't know anyone who's gonna pick up Subterfuge for like Mythic Plus or whatever.
I mean, subterfuge is damage.
No, it's not. The Subterfuge has nothing.
Your abilities requiring stealth? That's ambush.
Yeah, for Outlaw. You want
did settled or did Assassination used to play Subterfuge in BFA, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't have the Groat damage anymore.
Yeah,
but it lets you cast the Groat, right?
But Imkarot already does that.
Yeah, we already have improved Garrote on the tree.
If it ended the duration, then it would work, right? But the way it works right now is for Assassination, for example, you have two abilities one on the class tree, one on the spec tree, that do the same thing. They allow you to cast certain abilities after stealth breaks for 3 seconds, but they don't interact with each other in any way. They are just, if you pick one, you're not going to pick the other. I think the way it's positioned on the tree, it's just kind of to be expected to just be utility talent at this point. So this is literally just triple cheap shot.
Do you not think that it's an interesting choice that you can sacrifice talent points on the class tree to gain subterfuge, and then you don't have to go on the assassination tree? Or
no,
am I
because
misunderstanding
it's basically mandatory. Also, it doesn't have the damage anymore, right? So you're losing 50% Garrote damage if you don't pick it on the class tree.
Okay.
And then like Blackjack. It's better than improved sap, but like what the fuck is that? Like why?
If improved sap was a 0% chance of being useful in any situation, Blackjack is infinitely better because it's maybe 1%. I do like the idea of you being able to reduce damage, like on a cooldown by vanishing or whatever, or you're using your blind just to make the mob deal less damage.
Like if you're on Anduin or something, right? Like, or like I'm trying to like think of an example, but like there are situations that exist where a mob is CCable and it like does damage, and like being able to blind that and be like, it's a pretty fucking big DR, right? It's like 30% or something, right?
Then make it work with cheap shot.
Oh, then that's just that's fucked. That's fucked, bro. That is absurd.
I mean, wasn't this literally a PvP talent though?
What's up?
Wasn't this like literally a PvP talent though, that after a target came out of kidney shot, it would deal less damage for a certain period of time, and now it's linked to sap and blind?
No.
I'm pretty sure in Legion we had something like that.
Maybe in Legion. Legion was a cracked expansion.
Yeah, but you know, like the game exists for longer than BFA, right?
So here's
there is inspiration to be taken from stuff that existed like 10 years ago.
Here's my problem with Blackjack. For one, in PvE, the only thing you're sapping is an M+ mob that you don't want to hit anyways. In raids, you might blind something, but that's a 2-minute cooldown. Yeah? Like that's a full 2-minute cooldown for a 30% DR for 6 seconds.
That's a big number. Well, also, in addition, like if I'm going blackjack, I'm going to sap every single mob, like every single pack. I will be in stealth, I will sap a target, and they will do 30% less damage for 6 seconds. It's the same idea as what's it called? The iron wire, right? Iron wire is the silence, and it's a damage reduction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same kind of idea. Like you're just gonna like if I'm talenting into blackjack, I'm just going to use sap on every single pack. It'll instantly break and it'll deal less damage. Like what's the downside?
You can't sap targets that are in combat. Are you gonna go into a fight pack and you're gonna sap every mob while the group waits for you
No,
to
just
apply
on
the
one,
debuff
like
to every
literally
target?
one monster in a pack. I'm gonna sap. It's gonna deal 30% less damage for 6 seconds on pull. It's the same shit as Iron Wire. Like on pull, you just use it, you lose nothing, and you just gain a DR for free.
I mean, it does cost energy, right? And sap
not
is
with
not cheap.
not with dirty tricks. Let me. But no, like I think that's a powerful effect. No.
I can
I'm
definitely
not
see
convinced.
the utilization for M+. Same as Iron Wire. You might even just
Yeah.
like say there's a mob that you know like there's an uninterruptible AoE cast and you just blind it so it deals like 30% less damage, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that I don't like having effects like these tied to things that naturally don't work in raid encounters. And even on most trash mobs, like most mobs that are actually threatening are immune to CCs like Sap or like Blind. So I would like a talent like this to have some use that extends beyond needing enemies that are not immune to its effects, right? If that makes
Well,
sense.
I mean, it's like
that's why I was thinking something like Cheap Shot, something like Kidney, because those typically work on or might work on more targets. But
well, it's like
make it a
mind numbing
choice though with
poison.
Prey on the Weak instead, I think.
It's like mind numbing poison, right? It's just like you don't do anything, and then you just gain like a DR for free, right? Like you don't need to be sapping the most dangerous mob. Just getting a blanket 30% DR on just like a random caster on every single pack for 6 seconds. Like I don't know, maybe I'm on cope, okay, but that seems like a powerful effect to me. Like, do you remember how busted Outlaw was in BFA and like a lot of its power, obviously was just raw output and shroud and blah blah blah, but being able to permanently apply Prey on the Weak, for example, was like a big deal. When Between the Eyes Stun, just constantly applying a 10% damage amp was really powerful. And even right now, like mind numbing poison is a really powerful effect, right? And against a lot of monsters, it doesn't really do that much, but like you nickel and dime a lot, right?
But does the position on the tree justify what you just said, or is it just more of a thing that should be further up in the tree, or maybe be an alternate choice to something like Prey on the Weak?
Well,
So
how much higher on the tree? How much higher on the tree can it be? First rows are Shiv, Blind, Sap, Evasion, Feint, Cloak. Like how much higher can we put it? Like are we putting this on the same tier as Cloak, or?
I mean, it's on the same tier as Cheat.
No.
Yeah. I would put it on the same tier as Prey on the Weak.
So you move it down the
could
tree.
put it below Shadowrunner and allow it to path to the right side tree from there, still by having a connector to the bottom left.
I thought you said you wanted it to be moved up the tree, not down the tree.
He is moving
up the tree means towards up north.
Oh, so up means down. Okay, my bad.
What?
What?
He said move it up to the Prey on the Weak row, bro. That's one row higher.
No, wait. Are you guys looking at the updated trees, or are you looking at the old trees?
Are you like sitting upside down, or how do you confuse up and down right now? Is this an auto thing again?
Link the tree in podcast chat right now. Link the tree.
I'm sure.
Are you using the beta? Are you using the beta one, or using the one that reels?
No. What I think is.
Yeah. The blackjack is above Prey.
Okay, that's my bet then.
Okay, thank you.
It's still a mandatory note, though.
That's fine. Okay, I was just getting gaslit about my directions.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't realize that it moved on the new tree.
Yup. I need an apology right now. I need an apology.
Outlaws don't deserve apologies.
I'm demanding an apology.
We don't negotiate with terrorists. But where it is fine. If that's the new position, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I think it's a powerful-ish effect in keys. Now, I will agree that it's useless in raid, and maybe it should be moved to be more accommodating, to be valuable in Mythic Plus, and not force people into picking it. But I do think it's quite a powerful effect, and I think a lot of people are just writing it off because it's like LOL sap, LOL sap. But like I think it's a pretty like generic, powerful effect in pretty much every single pack that you pull in keys. So.
Yeah, I think we can leave it at that, right? Like,
Yep.
I still think cheat is a big issue.
Sure.
And
Cold
the
Blood has no
usefulness
place on the tree.
of sorry, what?
Cold Blood has no place on the tree.
Yeah, Cold Blood has no place in the game. Same as Slice and Dice, but I mean the ship on Slice and Dice has sailed. Maybe we managed to stop Cold Blood from happening.
I think Cold Blood should just be made
Cold Blood
stronger.
is a relic of the past when the game was very different and where like having 100% crit on one ability actually made a meaningful difference.
Well, okay,
But
so
that's no longer the case for any of the rogue specs.
What if we buff it where it's like gain 100% crit strike chance and crit strike damage?
I still think that none of our specs are really even Salty is not built around one ability dealing like massive chunk of your damage. We have so many smaller sources of damage that all add up to good damage that just boosting one of them is not going to make a dent.
Okay, but
Well,
Dance
listen,
Macabre,
let me tell you.
bro.
Well, listen, the law would much appreciate 100% crit strike chance, 100% crit strike damage. Okay.
On what ability would you use it?
Between the eyes.
On a 45-second cooldown, and then your BTE does
not
45 damage you would have normally done.
Not 45 seconds. There's Restless Blades.
Can we just remove Outlaw, because then all of these discussions become like much more sensible.
I'm telling you, the best spec in the game. Okay.
I feel like Outlaw should just have a debuff that makes all of their cooldowns twice as long.
Yeah, like it was with MFD, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to say they should nerf Cold Blood?
For Outlaw, yeah. Just for
I think
Outlaw
it ties
specifically.
I think it ties back into what you said earlier about why you think that the class tree is really good for the spec that you're obviously the most excited about, and that's because you can like almost all the talents in the tree, no matter where they are in the class tree, have some synergy with what you have on your spec tree.
Yeah.
And I just don't see that for Assassination or Outlaw. Like, I don't see the value of Cold Blood for something like Salty, for example. Like it just doesn't exist, right?
We just tune the numbers.
Shut the fuck up! Oh my god!
I hate you.
What do you
mean?
I hate you, guy.
Because, but wouldn't that then make it like powerful for Outlaw, for example? If you tune the numbers,
it's poo poo for Outlaw. It's not good for Outlaw.
You just said you want to take the massively boosted BTE. What?
Potentially, but I don't think it's competitive enough still. My point being is that like I don't think Cold Blood is like this inherently like flawed to the point where it's like, oh, it's just always shit, like get rid of it. Like you can make abilities like Cold Blood compelling. Like I think something like a crit damage component would be like more compelling. Like even just as a PvP talent, right?
Yeah, but it's too far down in the tree to be considered like a utility / PvP talent or like a situational. Right? Like this is something that you should be excited about. If you look at AR, if you look at Dance, Find Weakness, whatever else you have in tier 3, you get excited about it. Cold Blood, you're like, thank God it's not in a position where I have to path through it so I can just skip it.
Well, Cold Blood is on the same row as what's it called? Deeper Stratagem. And what's it called?
Yeah.
Deeper Stratagem and Mark for Death. It's on a capstone, right?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like tier 3 talents should still like enhance your spec in a way that is actually noticeable, and Cold Blood just doesn't fit the bill. And I don't know how you numbers tune it except for making it Mass Assassin. That would make it feel meaningful at this point.
Oh, maybe you just do that.
The problem I'm also having is just that we're already building for crit. We have other talents that give us crit, and then we have a talent that gives us 100% crit. As I said, like it would need something like crit damage instead to actually synergize with what we're already doing. Otherwise, like I'm already building crit as Asa, right? And even as sub, we might still go for something like crit verse, for example. And so if I'm already rocking 40, 45, 50% crit on my finishers, getting 100% crit guaranteed on the next ability doesn't feel as impactful as if my crit rate was only like 20, 30% maybe.
That's what I mean. That's why you give it crit strike damage, right?
Yeah. And it would have to snapshot for damage over time, I think.
Yeah, just make it good.
Just tune it.
Yeah, literally.
All right. Do we have any
First test
closing
match
thoughts
score.
on the class tree?
Yeah.
I understand people's concerns for the other specs, but I'm very pleased with its overall shape, design, stuff for Outlaw. I'm not stupid. I'm not like, oh, this is perfect for everybody, right? I understand the problems you guys have with it. I'm just trying to be a little bit more positive, and that I really enjoy the way both the class tree and the Outlaw tree are like shaped and framed.
I have one more gripe actually. Utility poison choice node. I don't like it at all. Once again, obviously this once again comes from assassination POV, right? But if you're playing double poisons and we have a poison choice node, we don't even have a second non-lethal poison because crippling doesn't work on bosses. So we have to pick between atrophic and numbing. The numbing effect can be provided by other classes. Atrophic cannot.
Which class?
I do think that that's not necessarily an issue of the class tree. I would just like to see the ability to have both non-lethals if you play assassination and have to choose if you play sub or outlaw.
Yeah, I think like a second choice node on the assassination tree would be kind of interesting.
Like, pick up the other one, right?
Yeah, just like literally the exact same one, except it's just you can just pick the other one, right?
Yeah, same as you can get like double step or double deeper or those kind of things, right?
Also, just something I disagree with is that my numbing can be done by other classes. One, the warlock one is gone, and then it's only DKs now, right?
Yeah.
And in the past, the warlock one and the rogue one stacked, so
yes.
It's gonna still stack, right? Like if you're
playing
rogue,
that was a weird
interaction,
right? Because the demon hunter Venthyr one and the rogue one didn't stack, right? But they stacked with the warlock one. They just didn't stack with the rogue one, which was super weird.
Mm-hmm.
So my assumption is that this will be done in a way that they will no longer stack, because that made fights like the Nerfus so much easier by just having like one less melee swing on the tanks between ability casts. That it wasn't just a 15% damage reduction for tanks at that point, right? It was more like 25 to 30, because they were only taking 3 melee swings instead of 4, and that was pretty massive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still think that having it as a choice node, I don't mind it. I actually think it's pretty solid. I just like the opportunity to somehow benefit from my ability to play 2 utility poisons outside of Mythic Plus content or PvP content. And in Raid right now, that's just not possible, because the only other non-lethal poison you have is crippling, and it doesn't work on bosses. So you don't even get the second effect from lethal dose, for example, for Asa. But it's a minor gripe. Overall, I think the class tree has improved a lot. I would still like to see connectors on the tier after cheat death to the left and right side, because I still think that picking cheat, that's the main issue. Cheat death needs to either move up, or you need to be able to path to either the left side or the right side from cheat death without having to open up that side in tier 4.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's going in the right direction. There are obviously some issues that still need to be addressed. But I think for the most part we're getting there, and then now it's just, dear God, the bugs. Dear fucking God, the bugs.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on a giant compilation next reset, because like that's the cope. It's gonna be the build that actually works, and I'm gonna do a lot of testing. I'm gonna write it down in a big document, and I'm gonna send it to like Reels. I'm gonna post it on Twitter. I'm gonna try to blow it up so that at least all the problems that I find are fixed.
Yeah, I think it's important there. Like it's a community effort, right? Like I think that for Sub and Asa and Outlaw as well, there's a form as well that you can use to, like, for all the people that are on beta. This is where the testing really matters. Submit the bugs in game if you find any. Feel free to just log in and send the bug report every day that you log in, just to make sure that visibility is there. And then also use Whisper. You can link it maybe in the podcast chat. The form to submit any of the bugs that we may not be aware of yet. So we can really compile a list and hopefully get most of them fixed this time around.
Yeah, like one of the XD ones is that so ambush and dispatch cannot proc mastery, but like let's say you go like a Shadow Dance Thistle Tea build for Outlaw, and then Thistle Tea gives you mastery. You have the little mastery little node on the tree on the right side of the tree, and then you go Thistle Tea to give you a bunch of energy and then a bunch of mastery for your big burst window, and then you go ambush, ambush, dispatch, ambush, ambush, dispatch, and then none of it can proc mastery.
That sounds fine though, right? I mean, Outlaw never really won a mastery in the first place.
Well, yeah,
would
but
you even like a world in which mastery is a good stat for Outlaw?
I mean, yeah,
Or,
it's just
aren't you kind
yeah.
of happy that you never have to worry about that and can just solely focus on whether or not you
well,
need haste or not? And if you don't, then you just go full crit rush.
well, the problem that arises is that if there's any synergy with mastery, it really stifles build options. Like, so because the current outlaw tier set is focused on, they use the main gauche as a or main gauche as the speed in which the procs are acquired. And if you were to play Echoing Reprimand, like the Echoing Reprimand Shadow Dust build, your tier set loses a lot of value in AoE because you're going, Echoing Reprimand can't proc it either, right? You're going Echoing Reprimand, Dispatch, none of those can proc it. You're going Vanish Ambush, you're going Dispatch, none of these can proc it. And, you're gaining a bunch of CDRs, you get your Echoing Reprimand back, which again can't proc it, then you're casting Dispatch, where builds that are focused around, Ambush, Dispatch, and, Echoing Reprimand just don't get to gain any value on things that proc via Mastery, which I think just kind of makes things really awkward for like non-intuitive reasons. It's not like it's like, oh, mastery gets worse because it interacts with like bleeds or something, right? Where like, oh, mastery gets better in AoE for sub because it's casting more finishers. Something like this is a little unintuitive and just leads to the stat being really shit.
Yeah, and I mean it always has been, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember like since the outlaw rework from combat and Legion, I don't ever remember a time where you actually won a mastery. It was always just not good.
Yeah, well, that's why you buff it and you fix the bugs.
Just tune it, yeah.
Yeah, just tune it.
So
You want to move on?
Yeah. We're
Because I got 20 more minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna sort of finish this up a little bit. If you guys have any questions, there's podcast questions, the channel. Do a little Q&A at the end. There's already 2 questions in there, but they're not really Q&A questions. One is, will Keep It Rolling change Outlaw's playstyle dramatically? Who fucking knows? Maybe, I guess. Probably not.
Well, it depends on like how you're defining changes the gameplay. It's going to put a really large focus on finding ways to abuse as much CDR as possible, because the whole loop is going to be, you're going to use Shadow Dance, you're going to go ambush, vanish, ambush into Shadow Dance, into ambush. You're going to build a lot of buffs with count the odds. You're going to go loaded dice to get 2 buffs guaranteed in the opener, and you're going to end up with a pretty consistent way to get 4 buffs at the minimum, and then you're going to be able to use Keep It Rolling to flourish it. Then you're going to use Dreadblades to snowball, and then with enough snowballing, you can get your Keep It Rolling really low, you can get your Dreadblades really low, you can get your Adrenaline Rush really low, and then you get another loaded dice. You start to snowball, and like Outlaw is a very snowbally spec, so when you give it an inch, it kind of runs away with it. So I guess it just depends on how you define changing the gameplay. I think it's going to be a fun gameplay loop, but I'm not sure what specifically you mean.
Okay, and then while people are typing their Q&A questions in there, what is one thing that you guys are excited about for the next expansion? Doesn't have to be talents, just anything in the next expansion that you're excited about.
Dragon riding.
Dragon riding is sick.
Yeah, man. I love me some world content. Being able to fly around and bat chest and fly around, it's gonna be fun.
Seli?
As always, like the reason why I still play the game, PvE content. I hope the raids are good. That's what I'm always going to be excited about. And we've already seen the list now of all the dungeons that we will eventually get throughout Dragonflight. And there's a lot of cool dungeons from a lot of different expansions in the past. And getting to go through all of these with Mythic Plus is going to be amazing.
I'm personally most excited about the fucking Sims because I'm a goddamn nerd. I'm proud of it. Nerds have been oppressed for too long. I want to sim 15 million talent combinations.
I'm going to remind you of that the next time you complain about having to sim everything again because you made a mistake and you just wasted 15 minutes of your life.
And you know what?
It happened.
You're
yesterday.
right. You're right. I will hate myself, but I will have fun hating myself, and that's what matters.
Oh yeah, just I guess like I try to be more chill this expansion, but just kind of arguing with people is going to be a good time again. Just arguing with people about builds. I'm astounded that there was any like with how limited build options were in both BFA and Shadowlands. I'm amazed that there was actually disagreement on what was the best. So with so much more granular decisions, I'm ready for a whole new host of telling me that I'm stupid. So that's fun.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, right? At the end of the day, no matter like there will be one best tree, and even if that tree is 20% worse than the other specs, it will actually get tuned, right? We've seen with Assassination and Area this time, like this expansion, and one thing that people also got to keep in mind is that there's while there isn't a whole lot of rental powers, there will be some.
Tier sets.
We're supposed to be getting tier sets still, whether they will be there at the very first tier. We will see, but they might actually fix some of the issues that we've just addressed, right? Where it's like, okay, we might just have these trees as a foundation, and then the tier sets will try out some new things, and the things that are really good and that people really like, they might turn up and become talents later down the line. And the things that weren't well received, I mean, they're just gonna get scrapped, and maybe they'll be recycled later. But yeah, there's a lot of room for specializing now that we didn't have before, as you just said, Guy. So I think that's pretty awesome.
All right. First Q&A question. How concerned are we about having to sink 5 points into getting evasion, cloak, and feint? Would you like to see some of them baselined, such as blur for Demon Hunter?
Nah, actually.
Yeah, I don't really care.
They're not mitigation cooldowns, so they're very situational anyway. I actually like the idea that I might just not have to play evasion or spend points on evasion for raid fights unless I can actually tease a mechanic with it. Because I can get, I mean, I'm going to drop a trophic for that one, or have to, but overall, I think
if you're playing double rogue, right, like you can, like...
Yeah. You might just skip some of the utility that we just had, because historically our defenses haven't always been useful. Something like Blur, something like Unending Resolve, all the other like shield wall like effects from other classes have always been useful, whereas our defensives have been situationally useful. So being able to just test that out in advance and then know, okay, I don't actually need cloak here. I can just pick up Iron Stomach. Iron Stomach isn't a talent that gets me excited, but it's still better than having Cloak of Shadows on a boss where it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I like that level of like granule or fuck what it's interesting. I like friction. I've always been a fan of friction. I like covenants on launch because I'm a psychopath. But the ability to be like, oh, this rating counter doesn't need Cloak of Shadows. Let me drop Sap and Cloak, and then now I get Nimble Fingers and Gouge and all these other powerful effects. So I like that stuff.
What about you, Whispyr?
Yeah, I personally don't really care. I think that evasion is so irrelevant that it probably should be made baseline, but I'm not really too mad that it's on the tree. And then having to sink points into cloak and feints just kind of makes sense to me because they are that strong. And honestly, the things behind them aren't that bad either. So I think the fact that you get them so quickly and they're just good makes me not really care too much. Yeah, that's basically about it. I'm indifferent.
Also got to keep in mind we only have 3 rows of talents there, where most other classes have 4. So we're kind of forced to pick a lot of them anyway. So it doesn't really feel like a choice as much as you're gonna have to path through those 3 talents for the most part anyway, just to get to the damage ones.
Okay. The next question is, what are your thoughts on ER being in the class tree, something Assassination never took, as opposed to something like Flag, which is something that all 3 specs took? Do you think it's good design to have a capstone or paths that some specs may never take?
So I've said this a lot during like just kind of all of beta, right? Where a lot of Assassination players have said, Echoing Reprimand will never be viable because in Shadowlands it was never picked, right? Which is a true statement, right? It was never actually good in Shadowlands. But with things like tier sets, with tier sets is the big thing for me, right? Where as an example, I said Blunderbuss would never be a viable legendary, and Venter would never be like an actual competitive covenant on Outlaw because no cleave, Blunderbuss doesn't cleave either. Like it's just, like it doesn't really make any sense. But then there's a tier set that makes it so Blunderbuss gains pistol shot stacks. It builds the tier set like really rapidly, right? And then because you're building combo points really rapidly now with Blunderbuss, now Flagellation gets a lot of value. And obviously numbers are a different game, but let's say there's a tier set for Assassination that says when you spend 7 or more combo points on a finisher, gain some bullshit, right? And then now suddenly, oh shit, now I want to go into double deeper stratagem, just baseline just to gain a lot of juice there, or maybe I want to go Echoing Reprimand because they are efficient 7 combo point builders, which get you to that tier set payoff. Obviously with current design for Assassination, it's not very good, but trinkets, tier sets, things like the Edge of Night daggers, like there are lots of effects that can be added to make it a little bit more appealing. I also hate Flagellation because it's a do nothing ability. You press it and then you play the exact same, so I just hate it.
So I personally don't agree with ER being on the tree, but that's coming as an Assassination player. But I think that with enough tuning, just tune the numbers, 5-head, Echoing Reprimand could actually be a pretty good choice. Just for the sheer damage that it does. Like I see a world where Assassination takes Echoing Reprimand, but then talents into the it does instant damage one, like the Conduit one, and not the legendary. And you just press it every 45 seconds, and you get a free Envenom on the combo points, and then just call it a day.
Yeah,
and I think that's fine. I think that gameplay is perfectly fine. What I'm kind of a little more curious about with the capstone design is why they're all active abilities. Like you have Dance, you have T, you have Echoing Reprimand, you have Marked for Death, you have Cold Blood. Everything in the capstone area with a dead end is just active abilities.
Well, yeah, because Rogue needs more keybinds. That's why.
It definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't. But I wish that there was something passive in place of maybe Cold Blood, because Cold Blood is shit. But design wise, I'm not too mad.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, as Guy said, like at the end of the day, at least ER has some rotational gameplay implications, and Flagellation does not. And while we liked it because it did decent damage, and we liked the haste that it gives, and I mean now it gives mastery, maybe you could have replaced it and then put a choice note behind which stat it buffs or something like that. But ultimately, I still think that ER is more interesting, even if it's only more interesting for 2 of the 3 specs. But there are still things like 7 combo point, Rupture, Indiscriminate Carnage, Spread that might be really good. And we still don't know how the tuning will end up. Say, for example, if Rupture starts dealing more damage the more combo points you spend on it, then suddenly ER might be really, really good for Assassination, for example. Because you just Pandemic 1 Rupture, and before it actually starts running out, you just have another Echoing Reprimand ready, and then you just chain 7 combo point Ruptures.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of ways to make it good. What do you mean?
They're not going to make Rupture damage increase per combo point.
I mean, we did have it in Legion though. They removed it at some point, and I still think it was a bad decision.
I don't know. I think that's smoking crack.
Yeah, maybe.
Sure, but I mean, isn't that what we're here for?
Yeah, exactly.
Crack smoke, yep.
All right, we got 7 more minutes. All right, let's get some rapid fire questions.
All right, the last one I want, just to hear Guy go on a ramble again. What would you rework Outlaw Mastery to, Guy?
There's a few ideas. You can make it so it buffs gun abilities. Like you can make it buff pistol shot between the eyes, and then put the gunslinger fantasy in. Some people have said it should weight the odds of roll the bones, but that sounds like a theory crafting fucking nightmare, and I never want that to happen. Honestly, I don't really care that much about mastery. It's just a stat that does damage. For assassination, it's bleeds and poisons, right? And then subtlety to finish your damage. Outlaw, it's just like a proc. I think it should just be buffed, right? Because You know, I don't see too many people saying that, you know, the subtlety mastery needs to be reworked because it's like it is a, you know, option of a stat that's playable. I just think the outlaw mastery is just undertuned, right? So it just kind of gets a lot of you know, flack.
Tune the
Here's a
numbers.
suggestion.
Yeah, literally just tune the numbers.
What about this? When you use a melee ability, your next range ability deals increased damage, and if you use a ranged ability, your next melee ability deals
Yeah,
increased
maybe it
damage.
could be something like that. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. It wouldn't really like change anything like fundamentally. Like you're gonna, you know, play the
I
game.
mean,
the
it
exact
might
same.
if I have like really high mastery, right? You might actually change the way you play.
Yeah,
your
never mind. I
additional-
don't want it. I don't want it because I don't want to sim fucking mastery breakpoints for dog shit rotations. Yeah, never mind. I hate
Yeah,
that idea.
we don't want outlaw to become too hard. You still want to just press the button that lights up on
Yup.
your.
Yes,
resource.
sir. Yes, sir.
Jesus Christ. Sick in the head. All right. I think with that, Guy will go to work and make money
Luigi.
and live a happy life.
Yep.
And I don't know what I'm gonna do. Eat food. Silly, what are you gonna do?
Sim.
I'm not gonna sim. Not today. No sim today. Brain melted from Scar sim. No sim. No sim for me. What are you gonna do, Silly? You gonna go to sleep?
Probably, yeah.
Banger. I love that. All right.
Well, thanks for everybody for hanging out.
Yep. Thanks for everyone
Uh,
watching. We do this again in
listening.
2 weeks? Yeah? 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think the plan was to do it more often, right? And more frequent and like lower
2 weeks?
duration, but
We can do
And
it in
have
2 weeks.
more.
We can talk about, you know, tuning
Yeah.
and actual because like next week should be when things are actually functional. So we'll have a lot to talk
Yeah.
about in regards to like, you know, not theory, actual, you know,
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. So 2 weeks. Right now.
yeah.
Yeah, mark
And
it
then
up.
Live, 2
I
weeks.
think we should definitely get like more like we didn't really have a whole lot of subtlety viewpoints today. So I think that's definitely something we can also look towards when
Yeah.
once like most of the subtlety stuff is actually implemented and works well and see how
Yeah, for sure.
everything ends up playing.
Yeah, sounds good.
Alrighty, and thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah.
Episode.
And have a nice day or good night, wherever you are.
All right, time to go be a fucking wagey.
Wait, what?
Time to be a fucking wagey.
Oh
That a-
yeah,
that a Canadian
corporate
thing?
drone.
Wagey. What's up?
Corporate drone.
Oh, I see.
Oh, fuck you guys. I hate you.
No, don't worry, the feeling's mutual.
He already left. Finally, the
Yeah,
real podcast can start.
Exactly.